There we go. Ha. Good morning, fellows and fellettes, and fellowettes, if you happen to be both. Well, this morning I got up and I thought I'd make a video quickly, not quickly, but I mean early, before the day gets going. Because, I haven't really made many lately. I just haven't felt as inspired. I feel kind of inspired in the morning to make a video, but then by the afternoon, I've got so many things I'm doing right now because I've been so motivated to, I don't know. I've been on a different mindset lately, I guess. And not that when I made videos I wasn't motivated, it's just that I had a lot more to talk about because I was thinking a lot more. I guess at the moment I'm thinking about specific things. I just heard a click. It couldn't be 7 already, could it? Oh wow, it is. The grow room lights turn on at 7:15, so I thought it was earlier than that. So what I wanted to talk about here was shitty people. I'm not going to hold back on this one. I don't have it. I'm unapologetic when it comes to assholes in this world. I do have a certain understanding that people are confused and that they're raised in environments where it makes them a certain way, and that sometimes they get older and they still don't know how to handle themselves. But it's unacceptable to be an asshole. That's how I feel. So I wanted to talk for a minute about how, no, I have not been lucky in the sense of being able to avoid getting myself in trouble. It's because a lot of my friends and associates when I was younger, some of them got DUIs, some of them went to jail for this or that, and various different problems. I made it a point every time one of my friends was, turned out to be a dick, to just avoid the person and ignore them. It caused me a lot of heartache when I was younger. Not heartache, I would say, but misunderstandings with my other friends who would say, "Hey, why don't you ever hang out with so-and-so?" And I'd say, "I just don't like him." "What do you mean? He's a nice guy." It's like, I just don't want to get involved with somebody who's going to get me possibly in trouble. And most likely down the road, these people would get themselves in trouble. A couple of people in particular that I avoided that got themselves in big trouble and did really stupid things. One friend who had a kid and then decided to just totally screw off and go back to being an addict. And when people have already been an addict and then they have a child with someone and then they become an addict again with the same drug that almost destroyed them, I don't feel sorry for them. I'm angry at them almost, because look at what you're doing to your child. It's unacceptable. Your life is your life, but when it comes to your kids, and one time he even got arrested with his kid there. I think he was drunk and he was driving or something, and I'm just like, I want nothing to do with these people, because they have chosen a path that's just detrimental to themselves and anyone who's around them. They will suck you into their problems. The reason this came to mind is because I'm just going to say this here. Okay, we grew up with some friends that were, just like every other teenager. Some of them were a little more outspoken, some of them were a little more shy. But as we got older, we started to realize that we all have. Let's see, how do I put this? When you're young, if you're very impressionable, it's easy to get sucked into things. I wasn't impressionable. I was very stubborn and outspoken, and I was always kind of like, this is how I see things, Go figure, right? So, as I got older, some of the opinions I had about people, I just, I wasn't a judgmental person, but if I saw someone making mistakes, I would be like, okay, I don't want to be part of that. And one of my friends that I had ignored for a long time, he was still good friends with a lot of my other friends. And he moved out to another state. And then he decided to start importing weed from here from over down in Oregon, and they were sending it over to Alabama. And he got busted. And instead of doing his time and doing what he was supposed to do, he narked off all of his friends. All of his buyers, I should say. See, he was a dealer, small-time dealer, but instead of narking off the big guys, because that was his brother, which lived in another state, the feds said that if they could sit there with him and bust the people as they came to his house, as they bought weed, they'd give him a reduced sentence. So they did, and he did. Then, go figure, he ended up moving back to town here because everybody there wanted to kick the shit out of him. And the whole time this thing was happening, you know, I was like, I don't ever want to see this guy's face again. And I remember back then I posted something on Facebook, like, because we had like a little group that we made up as a joke with our friends. And I said, oh, he's out of the group. And he got really offended about it. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I don't associate with narcs. And he's like, you have no idea what I've been through. And I guess he's still pissed at me. He's angry with me. I'm not angry with him. I just had nothing to do with him. In fact, I haven't even spoken to him about it. He's just the kind of person who's always angry. But, you know, I'd let it go for a long time and say, oh, well, he is who he is. But he's a dick because he ratted people out. So anyway, he comes back to town. He's been here a couple of years. And then, Juno, stop it. Dog. Came back to town and, go on. He came back to town. He's been here about 1.5 years, 2 years, and one of my good friends. This is one of my best friends here, if not my best friend. He's just a great guy. He's I won't go on the best friend thing because then my other friends will say, "Oh, you're my best." One of my good friends who has a really good heart and soul, and he's a single guy, and he goes out and he goes to the beach a lot. Rides quads and stuff. He's that kind of dude, you know, kind of a guy's guy, but very soft-hearted, very, very open, and just, you know, the kind of person that you would defend, the kind of friend that you would stand in front of a train for, you know, that kind of stuff. People you really love that you would go out on a limb. And he called me yesterday, and he was all happy, and we were talking about our plants and the season and everything, and then he told me he met a girl. And this is awesome because he hasn't met a girl in a really long time, or at least gone out with anybody. You know, you get to the age where you start to, you know, get sucked into this moment where you're in, here I am at home, I don't want to go out, I don't want to go to the bar. He doesn't drink really anymore, so it's, you know, it's hard to meet people, point being. And anyway, I'm going way too long on this. He met somebody, and he finally got the balls up to ask her, and he said, well, we should, you know, hang out sometime. And she's like, I'd love that. So they started hanging out. And he told me this was this other friend, the one who had narked people off and moved back to town. This was his ex-girlfriend from like 10 years ago. Since then, this other guy's gotten married. He's married. He got married in Alabama to his girlfriend, and then they moved back here. So he's been married for years. My friend went to this guy and actually asked him. He said, you probably, well, they were having a conversation to go and ask him, but he said, you know, he told him that he was hanging out with his ex-girlfriend, and he's like, you don't mind if we date, do you? And he got pissed off at my friend and said, yes, I do mind. He said, how would you like it if I dated your ex-girlfriend? Which he had this girlfriend for a really long time that there'd been a lot of issues about. I mean, this was a completely off-the-wall thing for a person to say. In other words, if you're a true friend of someone, and your friend that hasn't had a girlfriend in many years, who finally meets someone he likes, says, hey, I'm dating your ex-girlfriend, do you mind? Oh, hell no, you know, you're free to, they're people. People are people. I mean, most people wouldn't even ask or care. It's just that my friend is such an honest, nice person that he would actually ask him. And when he told me that, I was like, fuck that guy. I was like, you just tell him to fucking stick it up his ass. Tell him I told him that, you know? I was like, how could a person be so selfish as to not want a person to be happy? But that really opened my eyes. It really opened my eyes, not to something I hadn't seen before, but to the fact that maybe people don't change. You know? I'd say many of the negative people really have a hard time changing. And the people who want to hold others back. The people who have an image problem with themselves, and so they take it out on the world. The arrogance is just palpable with some of these people. And, you know, I've learned as I got older to just brush them off. Just go along. Like, they don't suck up any more of my time. And I guess that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. Other than making this video about people like that, this is really the only time I've spent talking about these people at all in years. Every time somebody brings one of these people up, I'm just like, oh, fuck that guy. You know, I have some, and it's not that I hate the people. There's no way I hate these people. In fact, with the right words, I could love them, you know, as I did when we were young, if I ever really did. I mean, loving as a human and loving as a, you know, as a friend are different. It's sad to me because some of these people are just have such great hearts inside. Like the one guy, you know, the two people I'm actually talking about are brothers, or stepbrothers anyway. And, you know, anybody who knows me already knows who I'm talking about, but the one buddy, the one who screwed up with his kids and everything, he just has such a good heart and soul inside, but it's hidden under layers and layers and layers of addiction. So I don't go and blame the person necessarily. And my point isn't to say that we should point the finger at people and tell them to be a certain way. That's one thing I've made it a point not to do. I've never said you should be this way or you should change. I've just said, if this is how you want to be with your life, then I'm going to choose not to associate with you. We've had a few other friends that my friends have asked, why don't you ever hang out with so-and-so or so-and-so? And I'd say, because they just give me a bad vibe, or because, you know, they drive drunk, or because they're irresponsible around children, or, you know, but yada yada, it goes on and on. Sometimes I might think, what is it, where am I being pious there, you know? But no, it's a protection. It's really a protection for ourselves. And I guess that's kind of what I want to want you to walk away from this with, is the idea that we want to love and accept everyone, but we don't have to let everyone into our lives and hearts. Even if there's someone that's accepted by our other friends or family, we have to use our own intuition to distinguish what's important. If we have a group of friends that we hang out with, and one of them is undesirable to spend time with, it can ruin the whole moment for the rest of the group. And we all know that. And when the rest of the friends don't have the gall to like ditch the person, or that they're just willing to tolerate it, you have to walk away sometimes. And I walked away from all of my, you know, hangouts and, you know, going to the bars with my friends, and never really a bar guy, but that's what everybody else did, so I just go in with them, play some pool. I guess I came into my own, especially when I met my wife, and I'm very grateful for that. It's been a wonderful, wonderful 16 years we've been together, and wow. It's been 17 years this Christmas that I've been with my wife. Anyway, having kids in the meantime, she had a child, she already had a 3-year-old when I met her. We've had 2 kids since then, so I've lived my life. Meanwhile, some of the people that I've grown up with, you'd think over these decades that you could go back and talk to them and be like, we were idiot kids. No. It sucks. Idiot kids turn into idiot adults. I heard my mom say something the other day. Somebody was over here and we were talking about people, and she told my friend that, she said, people don't change. If there's one thing I've learned, people don't change. And I don't know what to think about that anymore, you know? I don't agree with that. But at the moment she said it, I was starting to agree with it more. I don't want to agree because it admits defeat. We do know that humans are programmed and program ourselves through our actions, through our learning, but it doesn't mean that we are stuck in that personality, I guess. When I was younger, well, I guess I had a very similar personality, you know, because I used to think that I've changed so much over the years, but I really haven't, you know. When I was 15 years old, I was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead and Psychedelic Experience and Timothy Leary books, and understanding the bardos, and chakras, and all this crap. And I think, wow, that was really 25 years ago that I started learning about this shit. But only over the last like 5-10 years has it really become, I guess because of the internet, where it's become available to peruse these things, that they kind of come back into the light. And I think I'm fortunate that I was exposed to these things, because I was able to look at these verses and these books and these sentences and ideas and say, this is what people think is important in life. You know, this is what the older generation and the psychedelic culture and these various cultures all believe about life. And then I was able to derive my own opinion. When you're a kid and you don't read and you don't do anything but watch television, like a lot of my friends and people I knew did, you just get sucked into that paradigm, and it's hard to break away from and be an individual. I attribute much of who I am to psychedelics. When I was young, I took a lot of psychedelics. I wouldn't say a lot. I mean, I wasn't one of those guys who was tripping all the time or anything. Just, you can't trip all the time. It's one of the things. Psychedelics are non-addictive. If you're weak-minded, not weak-minded in a bad way, but if your mind is at a weak point, you can become addicted to them mentally. But if you're really processing stuff, you shouldn't want to trip again. So anyway, about every weekend, we would take psychedelics. We'd go to school all week, then we'd catch the Tri-Met bus down to Pioneer Square, Portland, and walk around looking for the guy who was going like this. Walk up and buy some acid, eat it, go home. 4th of July, we were just looking for doses, and had some guy have a Visine bottle, put a couple drops on our hand. Anybody could sell fake stuff, but they didn't. People were honest. So we were tripping all the time, and every time I'd have these experiences, I'd have these awarenesses of myself. And this is when I was about 14, 15. And I started realizing this isn't a drug, this is a tool, And I started having these awarenesses, these moments of, aha, whoa, wow, oh my gosh. It's as if life was experiencing me, and then explaining to me what I am and what it is. So, just so many fascinating experiences, dozens and dozens. And it just kept getting better. But it wasn't until a decade or two later that I realized, and I looked back on what I was researching during that time of psychedelics, that there I was looking up books about, comparing the Book of the Dead to the psychedelic experience. I learned about ego death when I was 14 years old, and I guess I was about 16. I just carried these things in the back of my mind all my life and thought people just know this stuff. People just know this stuff. And I learned the values of what people found important. And then years later, and this is the reason why I'm mentioning this, is because it kind of ties full circle into the friends thing, because when I don't know how people turned out the way they did or why, I look back to what we were doing, what we were learning at the time. And those who were very materialistic, who didn't have any real spiritual insight, they tend to be the ones who are still stuck in that, who are still thinking they need a bigger house and a nicer car. I mean, this same guy who I was talking about, the one who told my friend he couldn't date his ex-girlfriend, he also, he was one of those guys who, he got a trust fund. He's a trust fund given to him, and he spent the whole thing, like I don't know how much it was, a lot of money, in like a year or less, and bought himself a brand new Acura, went out and drove it drunk and totaled it into a tree, and then, his mommy would bail him out, help him out, and it was just disgusting to me. It's like, I just couldn't handle seeing that, and I realized it was because of what he was learning in his life, So I can urge kids of today to pick up a goddamn book and do some real research into not what's true, and don't pull that history card that history's a lie and think the internet's the place for information. Pick up an old book about something that's written by an author and read just for the sake of looking at the perspective of a person, not for the sake of truth. And this is something I've learned in my life, is that I read for the sake of a perspective from someone who's willing to take their perspective, write it down in a rough draft format, then go back through and proofread it, edit it, look at it again, make sure he still feels that way, put it on paper, have it printed, and have the book on the shelf. And all that sounds kind of maybe silly to some, but these days any idiot can post an internet article, and we tend to be doing our research as of to life on the internet. And I think this has opened up so much more information and so many more truths for people. But at the same time, has closed us off to some of the basics of life. Like, we don't know what the basics are to grab onto or what's really important. And if you read a lot of books, you'll find a basic pattern that most authors, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, a basic feeling that's conveyed through typed word, if you will. Maybe I'm just old school. It's kind of like an old analog film picture. You go out and watch it. You can look at some new digital photographs all day long, and then you come across one old Minolta photo from the 70s, and you're like, whoa, that one stands out. Sure. It's because it's a real picture. A good, solid, there's something about it, analog, and I feel like there's an analog world of speech and of text. That's the book. That's all we really have at this point. So, kind of went from people to books, but the reason being is because I think that the reason I turned out the way I did is because of some of the books I read, as well as some of the experiences I had. Sometimes sometimes I wonder if we're born with this knowledge. Some of us have this awareness or way of being, or if it's something that's really learned. I seem to have always just been this way, and I've been trying to figure it out lately. Like, is there really such thing as an old soul? Are there, is it just brain chemistry that makes me the way I am? And let me clarify, when I say the way I am, I'm not meaning better, smarter, or superior, or anything like that. In fact, it's almost, it's crippling to think too much, and I know that, so I don't think too much, I just do. But when I do start thinking, I like to process it, and understanding why people are the way they are is important to me, because I think that it helps us all to be better people. Not just to say who can I hang out with, or who can I trust, but rather how do others picture me when I'm doing these kind of things. If someone's acting like a spoiled brat and you notice it, and you act like a spoiled brat, and you'll notice that. And so I just thought I'd kind of rant for a little bit about friends. And I'll choose not to talk about family here. It's tasteful that way. I love my family. I'm lucky that way. It's a really important point to who we are and how we treat our friends, is how our parents treated us. If our family was always yelling, then we will probably yell. My life was too chaotic to really remember. I blocked a lot of it out. I've learned to block a lot of it out. When my dad died when I was a young teenager, and that moment in my life, I just kind of left everything, just blocked everything out and started over, and kind of processed it over the years. But it strengthened me. But I know it also weakened me. Of course, you lose a parent, so just looking at things for what they are, never dwelling on the past, never obsessing over the future, and never getting so caught up in the moment that you forget how you got here. When things are going right, they're going right, right? If I could leave on that note, when you're doing right in your life, hello Blue Jay, just a couple feet away, just chilling. When you're doing things right in life, your body tells you things fall into place. The last couple of weeks, I've been a little more motivated than I was recently, and because of it, my sleep patterns are better. I wake up quicker. My mood is better. All the things about who we are make us happy. I should say all the things about who we are what can make us happy and keep us happy. To know that we're just people and to laugh the little things off. And I feel really sorry for people who get so wrapped up that in their self-image that they can't enjoy life. People who, let's say, well into their 50s have to wear super fancy kids' clothes and always be hip and cool and get really offended if somebody doesn't like them. If somebody don't like you, then there's either means that there's something about you that doesn't relate to them, or maybe there's something about you that you need to change, depending on how many people feel that way about you. That's a point that I've learned. When I have one person point out, hey, you're this way, but then I have 10 people tell me I'm not that way, then you kind of go with the majority rule. But you still ponder the idea, maybe this person's right, because it's only fair. And it's crazy out there. a crazy world to live in. It's, to me, that's a stupid thing to say. It's not a crazy world to live in. That's a stupid thing to say. I'm sorry. Because whenever somebody says that to me, I say, crazy compared to what? You know, oh, people say, life is strange. And I say, what do you mean it's strange? Life is all there is. It can't be strange, you know? You got to compare it to something that's not strange. Is there a life that's not strange? I don't know. This shit's funny to me. It's humorous, and this is these ideas are how I've come to respect Zen so much. You know, just the idea of just letting it all go. I don't study Zen, I don't practice Zen, but I know I mention it a lot. Just because Zen to me isn't a religion or a belief system, it's a state of mind. It really just is a state of mind, actually, but some people need direction and they need to practice it with a guru, and that's fine, but there's nothing to practice except for practicing. That's what practice is. Practicing to practice to be human, and by the time you learn it, it's time to start all over again. Maybe you just turn into worm food and that's it. That's the big question. That's the big one that keeps this whole system going, that keeps everybody being an individual. I believe this, or I believe that, or I believe this. And round and round we go, right, peeps? Don't really know quite how to end this video, except for to say that I hope I didn't offend any of my friends if they're watching. I've always been very outspoken. I'm very honest and straightforward with the way I feel. If somebody asks me why I don't do a certain thing or why I feel a certain way, I tell them, and often they just, why did you tell me that? Why not lie? I can't even tell little white lies because they make me guilty. And that's a white lie. When people say that lying is wrong in all regards, you know, if somebody says, does this hat look nice on me? And you know it's somebody who's sensitive, what do you say? It looks like shit. I'm the kind of guy who says it looks like shit. And they're like, oh man. Oh, shit. Anyway. Life goes on, right? So I wish you all luck in your endeavors in your lives, and I hope that your friends are a little, I hope your friends respect you. And I hope you respect your friends, if you have friends. And if you don't, I feel for you. If you have a lot of friends, especially if you're young, cherish those friends, embrace those friends, and realize that when you're gone from high school or gone from this job or whatever, people will come and go, and true friends will always remain. They'll always be around somewhere, or you can call them up and, you know, ask them for a hand, or they'll go out of their way to come visit you when they're in town, that kind of stuff, you know. It's an effort on both sides. So, anyway, namaste. Have a great Sunday, everybody. I hope you're doing fantastic.